That's my girlfriend. You may recognize her from previous videos, pictures, and so on and so forth, but what you may not know is that she just went back home about 2 weeks ago. So she lives in Honduras. That is here. And I live in Los Angeles, which is here. And those two places are about 2,400 miles away from each other. So as you can see, today's episode's a little bit different. I've been in a very long distance relationship for about 1.5 years now. And I want to share some things that I've learned over the past 1.5 years or so. So I took the liberty of creating a little guide for you guys. And that's called The Guide to Long Distance Relationships. So let's go ahead and dive into this. Now, how did we end up here? Well, we used to work on ships. And she was a photographer and I was a musician. So we actually met at a crew party through my friend Josh. So long story short, I was trying to start an introduction on the dance floor by dancing with her and later on introducing her to my buddy Josh. But when the time came, he bailed and I ended up dancing with her for pretty much the whole evening. Honestly, it was one of the best nights of my life. Thanks, Josh. Now after that, we spent a lot of time talking to each other about anything and everything. And we grew really, really close. But when the end of my contract hit, I was only on the ship for about 4 months and she was on for 6. Well, I had to leave and she stayed on the ship. But we stayed in touch. And that's pretty much the summary of our relationship. After that, we spent a lot of time just talking to each other on the phone or Facebook Messenger, things like that. And to this day, we still see each other for spurts of time, only to say goodbye again and talk to each other on the phone for several hours. Our longest stretch of absence was actually about 6 months. This is when I went to Asia and she was in the Mediterranean. So that's pretty much how all of this got started. Now, although it's hard, which is a huge understatement at times, we are making it work. And 1.5 years later, we're still going, even stronger than before. Now, I have no doubt that some of you watching may either be in a long distance relationship, may have been in one, may end up in one, or just know somebody that is. But here is my guide to surviving a long distance relationship. Part 1, the art of communication. And the thing is, you gotta practice it. Communication is the lifeblood of any relationship, and I'm sure anybody will tell you that. But the thing is, most people won't really tell you how to do it and what it really means. And the biggest problem is a lot of people talk about it, but they don't really practice it. And that's the most important thing to do with communication in any relationship, not just long distance, especially long distance. But you gotta practice it. And I literally mean practice it. It takes time to get to a comfortable space in your relationship where you can pretty much say whatever you want. And I'm not saying just say whatever you want and actually make your significant other mad every time you talk. I'm talking about understand how they communicate, you understand how you communicate, and you learn how to effectively communicate with each other so that the relationship can operate properly. Now, if you're anything like me, you have 2 modes when it comes to communication. You either don't say anything, or when you do talk, you say really stupid things and it's not very effective. And it usually leads to an argument anyway. One thing that's really important here is understanding that holding back your feelings is really dangerous. Dangerous to the relationship. Now, I'm pretty good at sweeping things up under the rug, but you really can't do that, especially when it comes to long distance, because it starts to manifest itself in ways that you might not have ever thought that it could. Sometimes what happens is you may be frustrated about something that you are not talking about with your significant other. And what ends up happening is you start getting frustrated a lot easily and you just had no idea that you were going to do that. or maybe you come off as depressed, maybe you come off as irritable. It's just what happens when you hold things in. So it is so important for you to literally practice talking about your feelings, what you're feeling, how you're feeling, where you think it may be coming from in your relationship. So talk about your frustrations, talk about what you like, talk about what you dislike, and most importantly, talk about the things that you see for yourself and your partner. Now, I'll admit that I used to be really reserved about speaking my mind with other people, let alone my significant other. But the truth is, the only person in the world who has any idea what you're going through is your significant other. So the best person to talk about it, and the person who's going to understand you more than anybody else, is your significant other. Part 2, get on a schedule. Okay, so communication is so important especially if you're not in the same physical space, because talking to each other is not as convenient as we'd like it to be. Now here's the thing, Carlotta and I, we live in different time zones. Luckily right now, she's only an hour ahead, so it's not that big of a difference. But sometimes it's not that simple. For example, when she and I were working on different ships, or when one of us is on a ship, we have to deal with different time zones. Plus, the ship moves around, so we have to plan accordingly. Sometimes she'll be 1 or 2 hours ahead. Sometimes she'll be 4. Sometimes she can even be 5 hours ahead or behind. When I was in Japan and she was in the Mediterranean, I had to plan out my day so that I could talk to her around 1 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock in the morning. And we had to do this for several months until she went back home while I was on the ship. Then it was a little bit easier. It's still very frustrating. After being on ships for a while, I've seen a lot of different types of relationships. It's kind of given me a different insight as to how to really make it work. As far as getting on a schedule, this may be one of the things that a lot of us are not used to doing, especially if you're used to land relationships, because you don't just schedule a time when you want to talk to the person, you just call them. But you really have to do that, especially when you work on ships, because you have to pay for internet and people can't just call you whenever they want. They can't just call your room, and usually you're either working or you're off on port, so it's not that easy. But if you create a schedule, and I'm not talking about like set hardcore times here, I'm talking about maybe just one set time that you know, and then the rest of it, maybe I catch you, maybe I don't. And once you've reached the point of getting on the same schedule, it's really important to utilize all of your resources. When Carlotta and I, we used to communicate with each other, we used to use all different types of apps, and we use all different types of forms. SIM cards, calling cards, Skype, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Telegram, regular messaging, text messaging, things like that. So whatever we had at our disposal, that's what we used. But this is also great practice for getting on the same page. Now the next point is productivity. Long distance relationships are packed full of longing and anxiety that it just becomes really draining mentally. And so it is extremely important to make sure that you're always doing something. So one thing that I used to do, and I still do to this day, is turn that energy into motivation, to be creative. So one thing I like to do when I start missing her a lot is create something. Maybe it's writing a letter, making a video, making a song, recording something, whatever helps me get the creative juices flowing, but it's generally a project that allows me to keep my mind on her, but also keep my mind off missing her. So instead of now thinking about how much I miss her, I'm now thinking of how great it's going to be when she actually receives this gift that I'm about to give her. I like to call it a way of utilizing the hurt. And an interesting story is that I actually got into videography and video editing because of Carlotta. So she was here for about 2 weeks last year, and we had a great time, but when she had to leave, I was really heartbroken about it. So that same evening, I was having a hard time sleeping, so I literally just started a daily vlog that evening. Every day I would record myself basically speaking to her and imagining what it's going to be like when she is watching this back later on down the line. So it's kind of like a journal. When I would speak to the camera, it's almost as if I was speaking to her. Since I would be recording all day, it almost felt like I was talking to her the whole day. Even when I would talk to her on the phone at the end of the day, there would be some things that I thought I had even mentioned to her because I was talking to her the whole day. Here is a little clip of what that first video looked like. Hey, so I wanted to... I was gonna start this video off. I didn't really know how I was going to. Thanks to her, all of this is a thing, and I found a passion in video creation and photography and so on and so forth. So, okay, and the last point under productivity is to stay busy and stay focused. So if you don't have a lot of things going on, it is so easy to lose yourself in missing your significant other. And I'm very guilty of that because usually when I come back home from ships and I'm not with her, I don't have anything going on. And it's a constant struggle to just want to get out of bed and do something, as opposed to either maybe call her, or if she's busy, then just miss her. So besides doing creative things, don't forget about doing things that have an impact on your life. For example, maybe it's work related, so do extra projects at work. Maybe start exercising more. Maybe take up a new hobby like cooking or something like that. Try learning a new language. Anything. Just pick something up, make use of your time. Now, when we think about staying productive, another really important key to staying productive is also making sure that you're separating the time between the time you spend with your significant other and on your own ventures. So what you have to have is something called me time, and that's part 4. Otherwise, you can end up in a really frustrating place because there's no line between the two. And so sometimes me time could end up being me time with you, but then it's misconstrued as us time. So all I'm saying here is you got to make sure that line is drawn very clear in the sand. And now I'm not saying you got to push your partner away, but you got to go do something without your partner there. Now, coming back to long distance relationships, it's obviously you'd think that this is really easy. In a long distance relationship, I got plenty of me time. We talk on the phone and Skype, this and that. But with modern technology, you can pretty much have them wherever you go. And they can contact you or you can contact them. Now, I love talking to Carlotta, and she loves talking to me. And it's really easy for us to want to talk to each other all the time. In fact, last year, when we would talk on the phone, we'd be on the phone for 6 to 8 hours at a time. I'm not saying that's a problem, but nowadays I'm a lot busier. It kind of evolved that way. But if there wasn't a clear line between my time and our time together, then you could see how it would become very frustrating. But this also goes back to the scheduling, because she knows that I'm usually done with work around 8, 9, or 10 or so if I'm hanging out with my friends, and I probably won't call till about 1 or 2 in the morning. I also know that during the afternoon is when she usually goes to her other house and does some work over there, and so she's not usually available because she doesn't have internet over there, so I can't even reach her. So we are making sure that we are communicating with each other every step along the way to make sure that the expectations are very clear. And see, the thing about this long distance relationship that I have with Carlotta is that I have a huge appreciation for it now. Although, yes, I get very frustrated. In fact, I was just frustrated when I went to bed last night. But when I think about the fact that whenever we see each other, it's the honeymoon phase every single time, that's kind of cool. I've never been in a relationship like this, and I love it. Eventually, one day we won't have to worry about saying goodbye again, but for now, we're making it work. Because these are things that I've learned are most important in long-distance relationships, and quite honestly, any relationship for that matter. You can really take any of these points and apply them to whatever relationship you're in. So, I gotta go. I have a packed day ahead of me. I'll see you guys later.